If I was going to leave Penn State to be a head football coach, it really had to be at the right spot. When you've got these 4 letters written across you, the standard is excellence.
Manny Diaz.
Manny Diaz.
The 23rd head coach of Duke football.
I think one of the best moments for me, getting fired from the University of Texas. Of course, you really come to terms with what you believe in, and you almost at times have to hunt failure. It's gonna come, and failure teaches you. You know, you just don't learn from winning the way that you learn from the losses.
And I didn't know you spent time as a production assistant at ESPN.
It was a PhD in high standards. I saw a very high standard at ESPN, and then I went to FSU. I still think the things that were true in Bobby Bowden's program in the mid to late 90s are more true now than ever. The players want to know that you can take them somewhere they can't go on their own, that you see something in them that maybe they don't even see in themselves, and you'll do whatever it takes to get it out of them. I think Duke is poised to be a contender every year. I think you can win here, I think you can sustain it, and I think a player should come here not just for the world-class education in the life after football piece, but they should believe that they can compete for championships.
What are the couple things you feel like still need to change in order to get there every single year, year after year? Manny Diaz is next up. Coach, appreciate you doing this. Thanks for having us out. It's been cool to follow your career. I know we last talked when you were at Penn State, and excited to see you here at a great program, and glad you're back in the head coaching chair. I wanted to start with your first team meeting when you got the head coaching job here at Duke. You know, we went into that meeting. What was the first thing you wanted your players to really know about you?
Boy, that was a big day. There had been so much talk about who had left Duke, you know, 2 great seasons, you know, a lot of great players that walked out the door through the portal. And I really wanted to focus on that day to be about who was left, you know, who was in that locker, who was in that team meeting, and that they were the ones who were responsible for the winning that had taken place. And they would be the ones that would be responsible for the winning to continue. And because we had to, I felt like our belief was maybe shaken, and we had to reestablish that.
Yeah. What when you, after that team meeting, your first couple days on the job, what were the things that you identified that you're like, we need to change this right away, we need to fix this right away?
The first order of business was just keeping our roster. You know, as I mentioned, we'd already lost a couple of high profile players to the portal. And we had other guys who we were either in or thinking about getting in. And that's just what was wild about becoming a head coach again. Just in 24 months, the first 6 weeks of the job were just put on your ear. It's so different. And you just have to recruit your roster. Couldn't even go on the road to recruit the high school guys because you're just trying to make sure that you keep the ones in your locker room here.
Yeah. So take me through that process. Are you like looking at the roster? I mean, you're also trying to evaluate the roster at the same time, right? Because you don't always know all the players on the team. So you're probably watching the film of all the players. You know, who's worth making sure they stay, right? And like all that kind of stuff is probably on, right?
Well, and you want to lean on the people that are already here. Yeah. There was an excellent football staff that was here that had the weird, awkward task of coaching in that bowl game and doing that to serve the kids who ultimately deserve a great winning experience. So you lean on those guys. I met with all those guys one-on-one, got their feedback on the roster. And but early on, I think the first day on the job, I had 15 to 20 kids come through my office one-on-one that we arranged meetings just to talk with them and to help, again, sort of set the vision.
I'm excited to dive into your career to get to this point just because there's so much success. I mean, I think about your defenses at Penn State and how elite you guys were for those 2 years in a row. And, your time as a head coach and time coming up the ranks of college football. If there's one, could you point to one moment that you feel like has been the most pivotal moment in your career that's allowed you to be here today?
I think one of the best moments for me in hindsight was getting fired from the University of Texas in 2013. Because it really forced you to really come to terms with what you believe in. And you had to double down on philosophically who you were, what you could tolerate, what you can't tolerate, what are the non-negotiables. I remember reading Pete Carroll's book at that time, and he had spoken about his time being fired twice in the NFL before he went to Southern Cal, and some of the same things of just putting that philosophy to paper. And if you have a chance to get back in the saddle again and do it, this is the way it would have to get done. And whether that was as a defense coordinator, kind of went through the same thing as a head coach. Those lessons, they absolutely make you stronger.
Yeah. Well, what were those non-negotiables that you ended up coming up with, or the philosophy that you, after your time at Texas, that you put on paper?
Yeah. Well, defensively is really where it started for me, because that's where I was at that moment in my career. Quite simply came down to the word toughness. You can't have a unit that's not known for their mental and physical toughness. And you have to, and so what that, there's no coach that's going to say that they're okay with that, right? But there are little mini compromises that get made all the time that can have an effect on the toughness of a football team. And you can watch college football week in and week out, and you see it. And so it was a great lesson to me that no matter what type of product we have, the toughness of our defense, the tackling of our defense could not be compromised.
Obviously, I know I followed your career a lot, especially at Penn State, but I was doing more research before this interview, and I didn't know you spent time as a production assistant at ESPN. So you were actually in media before you made the shift to coaching. How did that? Was that for a couple of years after college?
Yeah.
How did that time kind of? I don't know. What did you learn as in the media seat?
It was transformative for me, because ESPN in the mid '90s was the industry standard. That really is in some minds the golden age of SportsCenter, and just everybody's got great memories of that, and rightfully so. It was a PhD in just high standards, and what you learned was, it's either all the way right and as great as it can be, or it stinks and it's wrong and it needs to be redone. And you would do a 3-minute feature, let's say on Brett Favre or Steve Young or whatever, and you'd show it to the producer, and there would be a 15-frame difference in video where you'd say, hey, let's get in this video 15 frames. It's a half a second. It's not, you can't distinguish it to the human eye, but to the eye there, it stunk until this was corrected. And so to go from there and then to go to Florida State in the late 90s, which Florida State at that time was the industry standard of college football, and to see the exact same thing, the same standard in terms of how the offseason program was done, and the strain or the knee bend or the finish. And again, there's no coach that doesn't say those things matter, but are you going to repeat it again until it's done absolutely perfect? And so I saw a very high standard at ESPN, and then I went to FSU, and so the start of my career, it was fantastic to see two separate fields, but the same common denominator in how to be successful.
When was the first moment during your assistant coach journey where you thought to yourself, I can be a Power 4 head coach?
It's funny. I don't know that you ever have that exact moment, that one day where that,
just happens.
I think it was always a goal, I think you get into it for that reason. Maybe that's not everyone's, pathway, but that certainly was mine. But very blessed. The head coaches who I've had the opportunity to work for is remarkable. And also the trees that they come from. And I was very lucky, even my first ever full-time on the field coaching job as linebackers, I was also calling defenses. So I was given a lot of responsibility early in my career, which I do think helps prepare you for being a head football coach.
I'm curious to dive into the process of actually getting this head coaching job here at Duke. It's something that I get questions from fans all the time. What's the process like? You again had a ton of success at Penn State 2 years in a row. I'm sure you were having a bunch of calls from different head coaching jobs that were open. Your name seemed to have been on every hot list at the time for head coaches. How did that process play out, and ultimately what made Duke the job that you wanted to take? Yeah,
I felt like I had a outstanding job at Penn State, and was very happy to be there, and could have stayed there forever. So head coaching jobs are really, really hard to find. And when you've already had one, that they're going to be even harder to find. And so if I was going to leave Penn State to be a head football coach, it really had to be at the right spot. And I had some opportunities here before that I thought were really good opportunities that I said no to. There were certain things at Penn State that really I thought contributed to our success.
Mm-hmm.
And as Duke was winning, and there were some coaches here on the staff at Duke, I was getting a little bit of the inside baseball as to why, Mike Elko was having the success here.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it it rhymed with some of the things that I thought made us great at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the job came open and you start to say, well, gosh, some of the things I really like about coaching these guys at Penn State, I'm hearing the same things at Duke.
Yeah.
So I think that was definitely one of the things that piqued my interest in when this job came open.
Yeah. What's the process look like from a first phone call to actually getting the job for a job like this? Like a bunch of different interviews, conversations. I'm sure you're doing a lot of meetings.
There are, and it can be so many different ways, right? But first you're going to generally get some sort of feeler. Like, are you interested? Because people don't want to waste people's time, especially now, with the portal being open. It's such a crazy, turbulent time. But that's going to generally go to a first interview.
Mm-hmm.
Now, within the power of Zoom, you don't have to do that in person or on a phone call. Then people normally narrow it down, and there'll be a second interview. For this particular job, that was in person. And then that was followed up by maybe 2 or 3 other interviews. One, I met one-on-one with Vincent Price, who's our outstanding president here, which was very important to me because I do. You're a little wiser when you're going for a second head coaching job in terms of what matters. And that was a big deal for me, that Zoom. Had another Zoom with leaders from all different types of departments on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to hear, the same, song again and again. You want to hear people that are on the same page, that believe in the same things, that have the same standards and ideals. And so, this process went a little bit longer. It probably went, I think I was hired maybe midweek or towards the end of the second week after the job came open.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thankful for how it worked out.
Yeah. And I'm sure that during that process, as much as Duke is interviewing you, you're also kind of interviewing Duke as well, right? Is this the place that I can go build a championship program? And you probably, I'm guessing, had that. You mentioned the Zoom you had, the important that you have kind of a checklist of, hey, is the commitment there? Are we going to have the resources possible? Can I build the toughness? Is that kind of how you approach it?
Oh, yeah. And just who are you people?
Yeah.
Because those questions, you do seek those answers, but even more importantly than that, are we aligned in our values?
Yeah.
Right? We can talk about tactics and strategy, but if who you are as a human being is not aligned with who I am, and we don't value the same things, at some point we're going to, no matter what we say in an interview when we're trying to impress each other, at some point things are going to fall apart. And you learn in this profession, you don't want to put your family around people who, again, don't stand for the same things you stand for.
Yeah. Was the family fired up when you finally took the job?
Well, they were. There was another crazy thing going on at the same time. So our youngest son had decided that summer that Duke was his number one choice. He was a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
And it had applied early decision to get into Duke. And what's wild is it was all going on right at the same time. We actually, my wife had a great thought. We didn't even apply for the job. We didn't say we were interested in the job until we cleared it with him.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to step on his toes and ruin his thing because he was so excited about the opportunity to come to Duke. And then the way it turned out that within, I think, 1 week that I got the job and he got it accepted. And one had nothing to do with the other. I assure you of that. It was really great for our family, and he absolutely is thriving and loves it here.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the biggest difference for you in taking over this program versus the last time you were head coach? Have you changed your kind of approach in the beginning? Now you're just
the
wiser?
Biggest thing is you just know what to expect. It's just, there's just nothing that can really prepare you for it, and I've heard so many guys say the exact same thing, but it's so true.
Mm-hmm.
You're around it every day, you see it every day.
Yeah.
But I equate it to it's like parenting, right? I mean, everybody has parents, right, or watches parents.
Yeah.
But when you drive home from the hospital the first time with that child, it's just different, and so Yeah, I mean, the speed at which the job moves, the way that people have demands on your time, you're just so much more accustomed to that.
Yeah.
How to hire staff, the type of people that you want to be, and then you just find your voice, right?
Yeah.
Like who are you as a head coach, and how do you fit with your being authentic to your personality with what the job requires.
Yeah. How'd you go about building a staff? I know that's kind of on top of keeping your roster and recruiting. Building a good staff is probably the most important thing you're doing. How did you approach it this time?
It is the most important thing. Again, I always try to trust some big ideals. So I believe in alignment. I believe alignment wins. And coming off of our time at Miami, stylistically, I knew how I wanted a football team to play. Defensively, it's always going to fall, under our family tree on defense. And so to be able to bring in Jonathan Packey, who had done a great job as a defense coordinator at Texas State and Incarnate Word, but has also been with me for 10 years and knows defense better than anybody.
Yeah.
But to be able to bring him back in the defensive staff, Rick Lister and Gabe Infante were at Penn State. D'Angelo Bentley, was at Penn State for a time with me as well. To be able to retain Harlan Bauer, who I thought really highly of and had heard great things about on the defensive staff. So we're able to instantly in that room, people know what it is and how it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And then offensively, really wanting to continue what we had my last years at Miami under Rhett Lashley, and having sat in the quarterback meeting rooms at Miami and watching Rhett teach, but watching Johnny Brewer teach, and very similar to how Jonathan Packey knows our defense inside and out as well as I do.
Yeah. Johnny
Brewer knows the offense as well as Rhett does, and so there was never going to be a discussion in terms of how do we want to get first downs or how do we want to stop people from getting first downs, and then to put a staff together on offense that either had connections to Johnny or connections to me. So the same thing. You just didn't want to go through year one and get after year one and say, oh, that's what you meant when you said that. You want to have those conversations before the season. And I thought that was a part of our success the first year, is because as a staff, we were ready to rock and guys knew what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So many of the viewers that watch this show are young coaches that want to be in your shoes someday. What are the things that you're looking for in young coaches when you are building that staff? What are the non-negotiables, as you call them, that coaches have to have?
Well, I tell our coaches all the time, you interview for your job every day.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been very, very upfront in doing is hiring guys to their first ever full-time job. When I was defense coordinator at Miami, 3 of our 4 coaches on the defensive staff had never been a full-time coach until that time at Miami. We had elite defenses every year there. And to be able to do the same thing here, I think of at Penn State, Deion Barnes, who's done a great job as a defensive line coach. But so what you do is you watch the guy every day, because it's not just work ethic in this profession that's assumed. Certainly in terms of your ability to translate information into the kids, you know what I mean, and to be a great teacher. Intellectual curiosity is a big deal for me. I like people who ask questions. I like people who seek to want to understand instead of just, you're quiet. They're quiet. You never really are sure what they're doing, what they're saying in there. And people who have I'm so fortunate, because when I was at FSU in the 90s with Mickey Andrews and Chuck Amato and these legends, they gave a green light to the room for me, even as a young coach, to express my thoughts, ask a question, offer a suggestion. And there's not a lot of coaches that are like that. And so to try to create that psychological safety where, listen, we have a room where, everybody has a chance to have their thoughts heard. Yeah. And what that allows for me is to see how people think and see who really wants to know something outside of their realm of influence. And that's the best recommendation interview I can have, because I see it every day.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about Coach Franklin and the things. I mean, I've seen how he's built that program now for 10 years, and you were there for 2 of the best years he's had. And I've had so much respect for how he's built that program and just like the culture. And the one thing about Coach is he's very, he has his process that he believes in, and he doesn't waver from it.
That's right.
What are the biggest things? What are the couple of things that you learned from him just coaching under him at Penn State?
Well, you see, as you mentioned, a program who, when you've got that time, you know what I mean? And then you're able to build a staff of not just what he believes in, the people that believe in his process that you can surround yourself with.
Yeah.
that enjoy that consistency, where they know when they walk in that building, they know exactly what they're going to get. The players know exactly what that program is going to be. The coaches know exactly what that program is going to be. And you don't have to worry about, all of a sudden these, wide variances of what mood is somebody in today, and that's going to dictate, how we decide to go about things today. It's such a unique place, as you mentioned, the culture there of toughness and hard work is just baked into those mountains somehow. You know what I mean? And I think that college football head coaching jobs, it's like building a rocket and trying to get it into orbit, right? And gravity is the strongest those first few years, And so for me, coming off the 3 years of being head coach at Miami, then to go to a program like Penn State and see, what it's like, and when you're in year 9 or year 10 of how you really can have your thoughts flushed out, established, and have people who have been with you for the duration who get it exactly the way you want it done. Yeah.
Was there anything during your time at Penn State where you maybe took a note and said, "Oh, if I'm a head coach again, I'm gonna do things that way, or I'm gonna use that"?
Oh, of course. I mean, you're coaches were the biggest thieves, right? You're always stealing. And there were a couple different things that, in terms of the way that James ran his program, that actually you even have a better perspective on, because you saw what it was like when you were doing it. Yeah. And now you have a different perspective of even just how to deal with your time. Because again, speed happens, and you'll have a thought. And if you don't hammer down on that thought right away, or pass that along, or shoot somebody a text, you'll just realize it's like a river, man. And like what'll seem important this moment, the river just carries it downstream. It'll be 3 days later and you're like, oh crap, I never sent that guy that text. And so, I would watch James. Actually, I remember when I was there maybe a week, and it was signing day, and he and I were just chatting just about nothing important. And I began to realize that in the 3 or 4 minutes we were chatting, a little strange group of like 4 or 5 people that were just standing there looking at their shoes just came by, and I realized, I'm like, I know who they are. They want to talk to you. And I'm like, I'm going to enjoy not being head coach for a few minutes, because people, you're the most important 5 minutes of anybody's day. Yeah. And when you're the defense coordinator, you are not that at all. So I was like, all right, they're all yours. Yeah.
When was the time at Penn State that you did, I guess, that you were thinking about wanting to be a head coach again? I mean, you probably had, you could, as you mentioned in the beginning, you could have probably been at Penn State for 10 years and been just, have the safest job in America as a DC there. When were you kind of like, okay, I'm ready to get back in the head coaching chair?
I don't think it was I'm ready after this moment. Because I felt like if I had thought about it that way, then I would have forced something. Yeah. I was the opposite. I was going to enjoy being a defense coordinator every day. I mean, just getting back into a position room, and those guys we had in the linebacker room were just awesome. And to be a part of their development, and to still see it now, even watching them play this past year, you're almost like a proud pop, watching those guys. So there was never a day of angst like, oh man, I need to go be a head coach. I was going to really just, and I've always felt that in this profession, I think good advice for anybody is that the right jobs come find you. Yeah. And if you have to force it, or if your angst is trying to push to get somewhere, you may take a job for the wrong reason. And again, I was lucky in terms of where I was. We're going to have a great deal of success. They're going to play great defense at that school forever and ever. But that's why I really felt that Duke was right, because it wasn't something that I was, forcing to happen.
Yeah. I've got a chance to talk to a lot of the players that you coached at Penn State during the last couple of years, and the consistent theme with all of them is they love you as a coach, right? they all talk about how much they love Manny Diaz and the culture you built, and it just was so evident in all the different players, no matter the position room, not just the linebackers. How do you go about building relationships with players? Guys, real quick, I got to tell you about the best way to fire on sports. It's Prize Picks, and they are a big sponsor of this podcast, so appreciate Prize Picks and their support. Listen, I've tried all the different apps, and Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports. And on Prize Picks, you're picking players instead of teams. So if you know how certain players are going to perform, if you know ball like I do, if you follow it and know that Steph Curry is going to have more than 25 points on Thursday night, you can make a ton of money on the Prize Picks app. And the best part, you get a free $50 from Prize Picks when you deposit just $5 when you use my code NEXTUP. That's code NEXTUP, and you get a $50 bonus. Prize Picks is fun. You got every sport you can imagine on there. I'm on it every night, firing, putting 4-man plays together to go 10x. I mean, there's some crazy, crazy opportunities on Prize Picks. Get that $50 bonus with code NEXTUP right now. Let's get back to Coach. how do you go about building relationships with players? I think that you hear that a lot in coaching. Oh, we're a relationship-driven program. We build relationships. But what that really means is, some coaches say it and don't really believe it. What's your approach to it?
I think first you have to be authentic, which means you have to be secure in who you are. People have a hard time at times being authentic because they're worried about letting the guard down and being real. Because if you're real, then you have the chance to be judged. I think that's a major part of it. I mean, I think the key moment of the 2 years at Penn State was when we got pounded by Michigan the first year, and to walk into the defensive team room and say, "Here's it is. Here's what went wrong. Here's how we're going to fix it." And really, that was a turning point in the 2 years there defensively in terms of what we were able to do. But you've got to have vulnerability and you got to have authenticity. To have a relationship with anybody. I mean, if you just judge who are you friends with, those two things are going to be important. And then I thought, just trying to find a way to make an impact in the program. When you, as I mentioned, when something's worked so well for so long, you say, how can I come in and maybe even push it to a way where it can't go on its own and complement the strengths. I give the players all the credit because they were phenomenal.
Yeah. As you build your team here at Duke, how have you balanced building the program and the roster to win right now, which a lot of times is transfer portal, go get the best players at each position, versus long-term success with high school recruiting and just the balance of managing your roster? How have you approached that?
Well, if you just look at our actions, I mean, we signed 27 players out of high school this past year. It's the best recruiting class in Duke football history. So that's a statement of intent that we want to build to win at Duke. What makes us unique and special is we have an elite education that other people at the Power 4 level can't offer. Combined with the winning right now, we're really the only program that can give you the best of both worlds. We believe that the people that this school attracts want to be here for 4 years, which gives us a chance to develop a roster in a way that I don't know a lot of other schools are I want to say promise is not the right word because there's no promises, but I think our families want their sons to graduate from Duke in a way that other schools don't. Now that being said, you still need to win right away because there's no such thing as a 4-year plan anymore, and that's why we were able to hit in the portal a year ago and add, because last year's team, there was a lot of really good players that left and a lot of experienced players that left either to the NFL or to the portal. And so to bring the guys in that we brought in and then have the guys step up that we had in the locker room was a major key to our success of winning 9 games last year. Yeah,
I mean, I was going to ask about last season. I mean, you guys were rolling there for a while and had a lot of attention nationally. Was there a moment during training camp or anything where you kind of felt like, okay, we have a pretty darn good team, even better than, I mean, you outpaced a lot of preseason expectations. I know that doesn't mean anything, but it is relevant to where people thought you finished and where you actually did by winning 9 games.
I don't know if you ever think, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You got a feeling that you're going to be a competitive team. You just don't know. I always feel like even when I got to Penn State, when you go into a new league, and even though I'd been in the ACC just 2 years prior, with your guys, you don't really know until October kind of how you match up physically with the people that you need to beat. What I do know about this league is that the teams that finish towards the top of the league are the teams that win their close games. We trained hard for that. I do think in terms of our mental toughness and resilience, the way we were able to pull out a come from behind victory in Northwestern in game 2, certainly coming from 20 down to beat North Carolina. Those are those type of games early on that swing a season because they create belief. And it's like the chicken and the egg, right? Do you believe you win the close games before you win the close games, or how does it happen? And I think I think both are true. But that gave us the confidence to have the platform to go forward and to win a bunch of games like that as the year went on.
In the head coaching chair, you're dealing with things that you didn't have to deal with as a DC in game. I mean, you have a lot off the field, but in game, you're dealing with clock management and managing risk and timeouts and going for it on 4th down, all this stuff. How do you manage that during the game? Are you a big analytics guy? Are you kind of going with your gut feeling? How are you managing risk during games?
So we do use analytics, which I think most people do to some way, shape, or form now. But you always have to still balance that with what's in front of you. I would say like there's analytics to blackjack, to the cards. But the cards, on that field sometimes can change value.
Yeah.
Right. And what we thought was a king, before the game may be a 7 right now. And so, and I've got, people who help me out with that I trust and where you never feel like you're stressed to make a decision. Mm-hmm. Firstly, you should already be kind of thinking through the decision as it's approaching. And then when you get to that point, you kind of have an idea whether you want to go or punt or kick or whatever it is.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk right now in college football about spring practice and whether spring practice should model more towards the NFL model with OTAs, or whether it's worth having 15 padded spring practices. What's your stance on it?
Yeah, I've been trying to wave the flag to push spring practice into the summer.
Yeah.
I mean, in our team last year, we had, I think, 3 of our 5 starting offensive linemen did not go through spring practice. Our Mike linebacker, our Will linebacker, our running back. I mean, maybe a third of our starting lineup wasn't here for spring. And I'm as old school as it gets. I love it. Let's build toughness. Let's do this. Let's do that. Whatever. And then this is all across college football. There's so many more, off-season surgeries, to get guys right. And so you just look at who's not there. And you don't ever want to act like you're punishing the ones that are there in spring because your numbers are so low. We had 5 offensive linemen last spring.
Every rep.
Yeah. I mean, so now what would be great is that when everybody comes in the summertime, okay, if you did have, mini camps or OTA style practices, and you could have a couple, weekend mini camps during the spring. The other thing that would change is it would change the urgency to transfer at the midterm.
Yeah. And
to me, that is the greatest threat to our game right now and we're trying to make some rules as an AFCA to make it better. But that's where so much of this, I got to get in the portal because I want to be there for spring practice.
Yeah.
Right? It would be the same thing in the National Football League of saying, I want to be a free agent in December because I want to show up to the Green Bay Packers in February. Well, guess what? They're not training in February.
One's there.
You don't need to be there. So there's no reason why the portal as it exists, you can't have do a fall and a spring at whatever school you want to be at. And if you want to go to another school, then you go there for when summer begins. Because we have very different times in terms of when we start spring semester. Some schools don't start until January 20th or so.
Yeah.
We started on January 8th.
Yeah.
Right. So our ability to admit guys at the turn is different. So anything like that creates an unlevel playing field is bad for competitive balance.
Yeah.
And if we lose competitive balance, we lose what makes sport great.
Yeah. With your defenses, I'm curious to hear how you, during your time as a D coordinator, even now at Duke, how you measure success on defense. Like after a game on Saturday, you're in there Sunday and watching the film. Aside from the easy answer, obviously, is like points.
Right.
That's the most important one. What are the data points that you're looking at that you say, okay, this is what's going to dictate whether we have success on defense or not?
Well, it is funny. As a head coach, all you care about is the win, man. You know what I mean? Like yards, you're like, the heck with all that stuff. Defensively, it's always going to start with, limiting. If it's about points, there's only 2 ways you get points, right? That's explosive touchdowns allowed, right? And then red zone touchdown percentage.
Yeah.
That's what correlates to points. And I always say there's only 2 ways to score. You can score from far away, or you can score from up close, right? And so we do a great job in red zone, which we did for the majority of last year, and eliminate long runs and passes for touchdowns.
Yeah.
Now, again, everyone's going to say that. How does that happen? That's effort, leverage, communication, assignments, tackling, those type deals. After that, certainly yards per carry in terms of run defense. We're highly invested in negative plays. Our tackle for loss numbers, our chaos numbers are always historically at the top of the nation. And if you can create negative plays, those kill drives, those create third and longs.
Yeah.
And so to be able to win possession downs is what gets you off the field. So in a way, the more we can be risk adverse, not give up big plays against, at the same time be hunting the negative play, sooner or later, even if you get first downs against us, we get you behind the chains. We get you behind the chains, and the odds say that we're going to get off the field. And again, every time you stop at possession, that's like it's like getting 3 outs in baseball. It's another inning that they can't score.
Yeah, I feel like you were always so good during. I've watched every Penn State game the last couple of years. Always so good at like getting pressure at the right time and like finding whether it's your pressure packages, whether it's when to blitz, all that kind of stuff. How much are you involved in that now as the head coach?
Not in terms of calling it. Packy does a great job with that, and I think that's what I said. I think philosophically we're just so aligned.
Yeah.
In terms of how to make it happen. But look, offense is rhythm and timing.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, to be anything on defense, you have to be disruptors of rhythm and timing.
Yeah.
And the guy that holds the ball every play, that'd be disrupting a pitcher in baseball, disrupting a point guard in basketball.
Yeah.
You got to disrupt that guy. You have to make that guy feel uncomfortable. Now, you can do that with pressure. You can do that with coverage to make him hold on to the ball. But you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's where, our sack numbers, our pressure numbers, those are a big deal to us. And the easiest way to do it is to get people in obvious passing downs.
Yeah. I mentioned the relationships you've been so good at building during your coaching career. How do you balance being a player's coach while also it's a cutthroat business at times, right? Like you got to win, you're building a roster, transfer portal, like you're evaluating your roster all the time. How do you handle all those conversations and making sure you have great relationships with all your players while at the same time that you got to be honest with them, right?
Right. Well, you've probably heard before, there's the performance and the performer.
Yeah.
Right. And we're always critiquing the performance, not the performer. The kids have to believe that you're invested in allowing them to reach their potential. Right. But it is a performance business. Right. And so you're either performing or you're improving. I mean, we're all trying to improve, but if you're not on the field doing it, then you're developing in a way that will one day allow you to be on the field and doing it. And the only answer again to this is you have to be authentic, you have to be true to yourself. You have to show them either on video or with data, where they, where they're not as good as the other guy.
Yeah.
And that's why we grade every practice the same as a game, so they can see it, and they've got a grade to it, and that's not subjective; it's real. Yeah.
If you could give yourself advice for back when you started your coaching career, what would it be right now?
I would say trust it. I mean, even just the idea of just getting into this profession was crazy to begin with anyway. You don't really, if you stop to think, and this would be true for any coach, any young coach now, if you really stop to think what you're up against, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just, it's too stacked against you. It's too impossible, and whereas the only way it happens is that you just don't even pay attention to the odds.
Yeah.
And you just go for it.
Yeah. I talk a lot on this show as well about overcoming adversity in your career. I mean, I've had a ton in my career, my playing career, and overcame it. I think anyone who's gotten to your level of success, there's adversity in life. It happens. What's the one moment, you mentioned the Texas, getting fired at Texas. Well, is there any other moment in your career where you feel like you faced the most adversity, and then how'd you overcome it?
I mean, even my last year as head coach of Miami, we lose our starting quarterback for the season in the third game of the year. The next week we lose one of the top backups. We lose two of our top three running backs, and we're sitting 2-4.
Yeah.
In year three in Miami, and it is on. You know what I mean? And that team won 5 out of 6, and the one we lost, we were 4th and 14 away from winning. And to be at that moment where the backs are ultimately against the wall and the team had all the incentive in the world to just quit. That even though that job ended that season, you felt like, I think there's something here. And then to end 5 out of 6 at Miami, and then to, what we did here, win our first 5, or you're all of a sudden you're like, wow, you're on a little run here. Yeah. Even to go 9-3, tacked onto that, you begin to realize that, we tell our guys all the time, it's a big deal at Duke because our guys they're pleasers and they're high achievers, and they did things that other people couldn't or wouldn't do just to get into Duke. But you've got to come to terms with failure, right? And you got to see, you hear it all the time, that there's no losses, only lessons, but it's really true. And you almost at times have to hunt failure. It's going to come, and failure teaches you. You just don't learn from winning the way that you learn from the losses. And so as a coach, as a player, we're all the same. And if you dread it, you're going to live in fear every day of your life because, those losses are coming.
I love I've heard people talk a lot about how, when something bad happens to you, you think in the moment that it may be bad, but it may actually be a good thing because you don't see how it impacts the rest of your life. And I think about your career, you obviously what happens at Miami, in the moment you feel like, oh, I can't believe this happened, but then you get to have a great run at Penn State, and now you're sitting here at Duke, right? In a great, prestigious institution. Have you had that reflection before?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, because otherwise you're not present.
Yeah.
Right. You're walking around every day sad because of a thing that happened at some point in the past. And then you're not going to connect with the kids. You're not going to be your best self to anybody else if you're worried about something that happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
No different than being a player who messed up a play 5 plays ago and is still thinking about that, and that's going to affect his performance now. So to go to Penn State, and I mean, what do we win? 22 games in 2 years, or 24 games in 2 years there, and then to come here and win 9 this past year. I mean, I feel fortunate.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge at a place like Duke that maybe you didn't have at Penn State or Miami? I mean, obviously you have the academic part where you got to get guys into school, right?
Yeah, but I think what we have found is that it is a challenge, but it's our superpower. Yeah, because the players who have the grades, they really want to come to Duke, and as I mentioned, they want to graduate from Duke. Yeah. And then getting to coach them, anything that a coach would want. You want a team that knows how to work hard and understands discipline and sacrifice. Well, guess what? You can't get into Duke without being raised those 3 things in your home. Somebody had to teach you hard work, discipline, and sacrifice just to do the work it takes to get into Duke. So guess what we get to do as coaches? We get to coach ball. Yeah. Because I don't have to sit there and say, hey, will you please be disciplined? Like, they understand discipline. And I really think that helps us on game day.
It's definitely got to be tough for a student athlete to transfer from Duke. You're like, I'm really going to give up that degree.
No, yeah.
It works to your advantage a lot. Yeah. In your first couple of team meetings, when you're telling the team what culture is going to be here at Duke, what are the things you're outlining about your culture specifically?
Yeah. Well, how many coaches use that word all the time, culture, right?
What's that really mean?
It's what we do for each other. It's a verb, it's an action. Integrity, meaning we're going to be who we say we are. Yeah. And whatever our intentions are, let's just be true to that. And then the 3 things that to me that anybody can really is our toughness, is our passion, and is our competitive excellence. If you bring those 3 every day, right, and that's why the integrity piece comes first, right? If you want to be great, right, you're gonna have to be tough. You're gonna have to have a truckload of enthusiasm, and you're gonna have to be willing to compete at a high level every day. If you have that, you're in the 5th thing, which is trust. Yeah. And there's a lot of things people can tell each other, but when someone truly tells you, "I trust you," that's strong, and that really is the foundation of any great team or a great defense or a great position group or a great family or anything. Yeah.
Now that you're a year into this job here at Duke, is there any decision that you made where you're like, man, I hit that out of the park. That was a great decision. That was a great choice. The best decision you made.
Coming to Duke. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything that quite specifically. I will tell you what's been great here is to feel. I say all the time, alignment wins. And to feel how, at this moment of Duke football, that from the university administration down, from our fundraisers and Iron Dukes, our donors, athletics department, that everybody is really fired up for Duke football and really pouring into Duke football in a way that I don't know has ever really been done. I feel like I'm just a lucky guy here, timing wise, when everybody understands that the standard of what. When you've got these 4 letters written across you, the standard is excellence. And whether they're bouncing the ball, they shoot into a 10-foot hoop, or we're running around on the gridiron, excellence is excellence.
Yeah. Say we're sitting down 5 years from now. What do you hope Duke football looks like?
I want, and I think we're poised exactly to do this. Is that given the rules changes in college football, I think Duke is poised to be a contender every year. I think with what has changed, I think you can win here. I think you can sustain it. And I think a player should come here not just for the world-class education in the life after football piece, but they should believe that they compete for championships every year and then go to the NFL. I don't think you have to sacrifice any of those 4 things to come here to Duke.
Yeah. What do you hope your players say about you?
That I am who I say I am, and that I am looking for every possible angle to get them to be the best they can possibly be. And the greatest restrictor of human performance is internal. It's fear. It's within their own mind. And so, like I say, if they know that I'm dead set on giving them the freedom from negative thoughts, negativity, just all that things that hamper performance, that they realize that without those they can soar.
Yeah. You mentioned getting to the point where you're competing for championships every year. Every coach has a wish list, right? What are the couple of things you feel like still need to change in order to get there every single year, year after year?
Depth.
Yeah.
That's our biggest thing right now, which is, again, fair with where our numbers were and how we had to piece last year's roster together. If we can recruit and, when we recruit over the next 3 years, the same way we did this past incoming freshman class, we have a chance to get old, but have a chance to get deep with our type of guys that we really feel like we can win with.
Yeah. How's the NIL support been here at Duke, and how's it adjusted your strategy and how you build your roster?
Oh, I think that's what's been important is look, we're never going to be a transactional program. This is not a place where people are just coming strictly. They understand that Duke can provide so much more than just the financial aspect. However, we are living in today's day and events, so you have to have it. And the support, again, that the people behind our program have had to push our NIL program forward has really been astounding. And that really shows that people here at Duke are serious about Duke football winning.
Yeah.
And it's a really good time to be good at football, and I think everybody here understands that even as great as Duke basketball is, if you love Duke basketball, you have to protect Duke football, and that a rising tide floats all boats.
Yeah. How's the do you guys work closely with the basketball program here at all? And
We've got great
stuff going on.
Relationships. I mean, if you look at the quality of coach that's on this campus. Oh my gosh! John Shire and Kara Lawson and Chris Pollard's doing an unbelievable job in baseball. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, we're ranked. It feels like top 15 in almost every sport there is, and so it's just a great environment. And you got to think now, Duke's got about 7,000 students undergrad. There's about 700 student athletes. 1 out of 10 students here at Duke is a student athlete. So the athletic part here and the excellence in athletics is so baked in to what makes this place unique.
Yeah. Last couple of things I got for you, Coach. I appreciate all your time. Curious to hear, what's the biggest philosophical change throughout your career? I've heard some coaches say, as I've gotten older, I maybe, not as focused on the little things, or I'm not, was there anything that you've changed throughout your career and what you believe in?
I mean, schematically, you're always making changes, right? Because the game has changed in terms of what, some of the types of blitzes that we ran more in the 2000s, the defensively that's evolved. I think, I've always been drawn to efficiency, right? I mean, if we can do it in 100 pages, can we do it in 50? If we can do it in 50, can we do it in 25? We can do it in 25. How can we streamline things? You've had to change, now with all the tools that you can teach with, there. But I don't know that there's anything just that you go complete 180. In fact, I would argue that even when people talk about NIL or they talk about, all the different things in our program, I still think the things that were true in Bobby Bowden's program in the mid to late 90s are more true now than ever, right?
Yeah.
That the players want to know that you can take them somewhere they can't go on their own, that you see something in them that maybe they don't even see in themselves, and you'll do whatever it takes to get it out of them, and I think that is now the players have a chance to vote, that if they realize they don't have that, they can go try to leave, and they all talk to each other and try to find out somewhere they can get it.
Yeah. Last question for you, Coach. What's your why? What's the reason you do what you do every day?
So when I first started, this might even answer your last question too. I left ESPN to come to coach football because I was just enamored with the X's and O's, and I still am. I love the, sort of the iceberg below water, just all the things that you can't see when you're watching a game on TV or in the stands. And that is still, just even coming here, we're still sitting with the defensive staff and we're trying to tweak this and tweak that and what can we do to make it better, because these offenses are always trying to stay a step ahead. So I still love that. But early on in my DC career, I began to realize that this thing would happen during the course of a game. And it only happened maybe a few times during the course of a year where the players, they so lost themselves in the scheme. Yeah. When you see when guys take their individual wants, desires, goals, and they just put them aside and they just submit and surrender to the scheme, you would watch, it looked like we'd have 15 guys out there. You know what I mean? They would run it, swarmed, quarterback drops back, 3 guys are hitting him, throws downfield, 3 guys are breaking the pass up. And there's just a speed of play where no one's thinking, they're just going. And to me, the only way you can have that is when you've got ultimate trust. I'm going to play so hard because I know the guy next to me is going to do his exact job.
Yeah.
And that became the juice. You know, it's like, man, did you get it for a quarter? Could you get it for a half? Maybe I don't know if I've ever had it for more than a half.
Yeah.
Where it just seems like it doesn't matter what they do. Our guys are just on top of everything. And so my goal now is to try to create an atmosphere as much as possible to recreate that. Because when you see people that it's the magic of sport, you know, when people become something, it is truly the whole becoming more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah.
And that's what I love.
Awesome. Coach, I appreciate your time. This is great. Fun conversation, and excited to see all your success here.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Appreciate it, Coach.
Next up.